Okay, welcome to our session on Journey. My name is Mark Parkinson. I am a former lot of things. I was irrelevant in a lot of jobs, and now I'm a former irrelevant in a lot of jobs. But Thrive asked me today to come and moderate a panel. My most recent work has been that I was the CEO of the American Healthcare Association for 14 years and retired from that last January, and I'm now currently working as a consultant for ACA. I'm on the Ensign board at a large nursing home company. I have a website that I'll talk about a little bit in the next session, and I also work with a physiatry company named CRC. In my work over the 14 years that I was at the American Healthcare Association, and in the last couple of years, I've had an opportunity to run across a lot of really good operators and a lot of really good companies, and that's been fun. And we're here today to highlight one of them, but more than just highlighting Journey, we want to learn from them how they have experienced, what have they done to achieve this remarkable success. And, you know, I don't know if you have these people in life that you either went to high school with or whatever, that you run into them and they're like doing really, really well in life, and it, you know, it makes you feel good, and then you start thinking, wow, maybe I'm not doing so great. Journey will make you feel like crap. 2 years ago, this company did not exist. In March of 2024, the Journey did not exist as a nursing home company. By the end of June of this year, it will be 43 facilities. And you might say, well, maybe they just pieced together a bunch of facilities and they're, you know, running them in a poor way and just kind of schlocking it all together, and that is not it at all. In the facilities that they have taken over, they have done remarkable work in those facilities. The quality measure star and the 5-star score for their mature buildings is up over 1 full point. Their occupancy system-wide, again in their mature buildings, is over 90%. They have some really good ideas on occupancy. They take their buildings down to 0 turnover, and they've created in a short period of time a culture it's really remarkable that they've been able to do it in a couple of years. One of the things that I have learned in getting ready for this and learning about Journey is that even though it may sound like this is an overnight wonder, it is not an overnight wonder. Because what they've done very smartly is that they've assembled a team of people that have been at this for decades. And we're very fortunate to have 3 of the major principals from Journey here to talk with us about their backgrounds, and more important, how they have done what they have done and what lessons the rest of us can learn from these accomplishments. So with no further ado, let me introduce our panel. We have Matt Trammell, who's the COO. Matt, welcome. Jody O'Mara, let's give Matt a round of applause. This is Jody O'Mara, who's the Chief Nursing Officer. Jody, welcome. And Austin Steele, who's the Chief Strategy Officer. Austin, welcome and thank you. Now, before we get into the strategies and exact things that they've done, I think it's important for you to understand the depth of experience that this team has had. So I'm just going to start out and have each of them talk about their backgrounds and what led them to Journey. So Matt, why don't you kick this off? How did you get in? When did you get into LTC, and what have you done?
Sure. You know, my career started off in 2005, really, with a growing company, American Senior Communities, Indiana-based, and I started off as an administrator with them. I got a chance to be a 1-year assistant administrator, learn from a mentor that I work with even today, Bernie McGinnis, and from there, you know, I spent 7 years as an administrator, and then I became a regional, accomplished that goal. This company was able to grow from 27 homes when I started to 83 when I left over the course of those 12 years. And
that was American Seniors Community?
American Senior Communities.
In Indiana?
Absolutely. And what I learned was, you know, how to change culture, you know, go into distressed assets as they were acquiring and growing. And I spent, you know, another 5 years as a regional with them, and then really branched out to multi-state. You know, when you're just in one state, you know, you think your state's the toughest state, and, you know, got into Illinois, and, you know, over the years worked regional positions in Ohio, Kentucky, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and made my way around. And then prior to Journey, kind of finished off with having a division vice president role at Life Care Centers of America and ran a 4-state division and really spent some time getting a national view and learning from them. And so really got a chance to make a lot of mistakes and learn from them, grow over that time frame. So
Yeah, I mean, you were working for some of the best companies in the country, American Seniors Community, Life Care. Those are folks that really know what they were doing. You did it for 2 decades, and I'm just trying to make the point that it's hard to just do this all at once, but if you have a team of people that have been at it for a while, it makes it much more possible. I think the other thing that jumps out at me, Matt, is that you were an administrator for 7 years. So you worked on the floor. You know what the patients are thinking. You know what the families are thinking. You know what the residents are thinking.
You know, I had a great experience for a very short time after being a regional for 7 years. I stopped traveling for about 18 months, and I took the closest facility to my house and kind of got a chance to fall back in love with being an administrator and just running one facility. And I had knock a lot of rust off for a short time and kind of get used to that seat. And then not long after I got a chance, I was making my way back into being a regional. You know, I wanted to be close to home for a little bit, and it's hard. You know, it's continuously evolving, and being a day-to-day administrator or director of nursing is a really tough job.
Yeah. I mean, the heads of some of our best companies, Norman Roquiche was an administrator for 10 years, and now he owns and runs Marquis. Barry Port was administrator, now he's at Ensign. Bob Norcross started as a CNA, and now he's the CEO at Prestige. Bernie, your CEO, started as a CNA. So that ground floor work is just so critical in my opinion. Jody, tell us your background.
I started my career at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis in orthopedic surgery and acute care. I spent about 5 years there. That's the foundation of my career. And then I soon found my passion in long-term care. I've been in long-term care for about 17 years. I served as a director of nursing services for a few years and senior regional nurse for about 10, working for a company based in New York that operated in 9 states. So I was able to gain experience in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, many different states outside of Missouri. Learned acquisitions, getting buildings off special focus. So policy procedure, different clinical systems. Gail Polanski was my mentor there. She's now retired. One of the best clinical leaders out there that taught me a lot of what I know today in long-term care. Moved on to a company based in St. Louis, MGM Healthcare, serving as their CNO for 8 years. Learned divestitures. We acquired over 20 facilities. We were in 3 states, Oklahoma, Iowa, and St. Louis. Great operator. And then I was recruited by Bernie, who I think is the best in our industry. And I've been there for about 1.5 years.
Thanks, Jody.
Yep.
Austin?
Yeah, my background's very similar. I started as an administrator back in 2008. I ran my own buildings I was doing the math, just while Matt was talking, ironically, 7 years before I was promoted into a regional operator role. What's really neat about my first experience when I did my AIT, and then I was going to take over a building, and so they tell you, I worked for American Senior Communities for close to 15 years, and kind of grew within that organization. But my first building, they just kind of tell you, hey, this is the building you're going to take. So I go and I take over this building. The outgoing operator is Matt. Matt he was running that building, and then he was being promoted to run like a bigger building, So that's how that company kind of worked. Like, all right, you're going to take over this building. It has 128 beds. Now you're going to run 161 bed that, has a higher skilled. And so Matt was taking over for a guy that was being promoted to take his first regional job, which happened to be Bernie, who was our CEO. So that's back in 2008. And we had worked alongside of one another, Matt and I had, and then Bernie eventually became, he became my regional, and I worked with Bernie for quite a few years. But then I became a regional, and then I left American Senior Communities to go take a COO role, and then Bernie was talking about starting Journey, and I took the leap of faith and I took the Chief Strategy Officer role. So a little bit unique role for me. It's not like I grew up on the strategy side, but really grew up as a nursing home administrator and operator.
So I think we made the point, all of you have been at this for around 20 years. It
Yeah.
didn't just journey, it's not your first rodeo. Having that long experience, do any of you want to share on how that depth of experience has helped you out? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that, really working for great companies, you understand how to do things right, and you tend to gather. I think one of the common things that you heard from everybody is everybody's got this mentor, a couple of mentors that have really guided them along the way. And I think it's hard to make your way up and do things the right way without having that person or group of people surrounding you that are going to show you the right way, how to build something right, that you can call when you're like, man, I don't never run across this, So I think that those experiences are great. And having worked for growing companies that are acquiring over time, you're kind of under that haven if you're a regional and whatnot, under those protections, but you do see how to change culture. And,
Yeah.
and when you see those victories, you can replicate them.
There's probably not a lot of things that you haven't seen before. I mean, I know every time Stacy and I thought that, then something really, really weird would happen. But you guys have seen a lot of things. You've dealt with a lot of situations. So let's talk about Journey now. I know when we talk about Journey, it always starts with the mission statement. And I see at least two of you. Matt, I don't know if you have one of the hearts on or not, but I see.
Jody took my pen this morning.
Okay.
True story.
So why don't you tell us about the mission statement? What is this heart all about? And tell us about the mission of Journey. Austin, you want to, or Jody?
I'll go first. We honestly are changing the world one heart at a time. And I want to share just a small story with you. We took a very challenging building in Decatur, Georgia, called Eastlake. It was a special focus candidate list, no processes, no systems in place. We show up day of acquisition. We implement 9 clinical systems, lots of clinical applications, very difficult for the director of nursing, who was just doing the best he could do. We delivered a brand new shuttle. We had residents in tears that hadn't left the building in years, tears of joy that they were able to go on activities for the shuttle, to go on appointments. And that building had 2 great surveys. They're no longer 6 months and was removed from the special focus candidate list, cleared on first revisit, which historically had been very difficult for Georgia in general to be able to clear on first revisit. And he was the DNS of the year. He was awarded Director of Nursing of the Year for Journey in 2025. And in 2026, he is now a regional nurse for Journey. So we are definitely changing the world one heart at a time.
And that's the mission statement, changing the world one heart at a time. And you guys believe it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we believe it. We try to live it out every single day. Jody talked about, as simple as it may sound, that we bring a bus in. So part of our acquisition, every single acquisition that we do, on day one, you get a new bus. All right, it's a brand new bus. They all come out of like northern Indiana because that's like the bus and RV capital of the world. I know this because I'm from there, but that is true. But they get a new bus, and when we share that information with the department head team ahead of time, they're so excited. I mean, people cheer. We had a resident actually at the same community that Jody's talking about. We had a resident that had lived there for 4 years and had never left the building, and she was in tears because we're bringing a bus, and she really didn't care where we were going to go. She just wanted to leave the building, not elope, but it was with us, but she wanted to go on the bus and get outside the building. And that, as simple as it may sound, that's how we change the world one heart at a time.
Have any, and without naming the names of the companies, but have any of you ever worked for a company that didn't have an articulated mission statement, that people didn't know the mission statement? How important is it that you have this mission statement that, and I've been to some of your events, your frontline nurses know the mission statement. How important is just the act of having it and then acting on it?
You know, I once worked for a boss that said, he came up with an acronym for CARE, and we were pushing it out in the company, and I think it was compassion, attentiveness, relationships, excellence. Now, I still remember to this day. And midway through, I didn't memorize it, and he's pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And he told us that if we weren't tired of hearing about it, then he hadn't communicated it enough. And when you're like, it clicks, and you know that, and you can, that's your podium, that's where you anchor yourself to. You know, I think that was really important to always remember when times get tough, we're trying to accomplish something, what are we made of? Who are we? What are we trying to do, and how?
Yeah. I mean, that's really a compelling mission statement. You want, a mission statement is something that'll get you up in the morning, you're willing to work late at night, and you guys, you really think you're changing the world. You and your teams believe that. And I feel like you are. You're doing it one heart at a time, which makes it go really slow, but you are changing the world. Your business model is, and I can see how this works, you guys take over really crap buildings, basically. You take over buildings that have failed, which is a cool business model because they're usually cheaper than something that, you take over buildings that have like negative EBITDA. It's not like we're going to pay 10 times EBITDA. It's like, can we get this to break even? But I get it because you're getting some great prices. Some of these are probably fire sales, and you know, the REITs or whoever has them needs somebody to come in that knows what they're doing. So when you come into these disastrous situations, they're usually 1 star. Some of them are special focus. You know, you name it. What do you do, let's say, the first 60, 90 days in a new building? What do you do that people might be able to think about, hey, that's something that I can take back and use in my operation?
You know, one of the things that we really look at day one, there's a lot of preemptive coming in and getting in front of the staff. We try to establish some baseline like standards as a company, in whether it's, hey, we do say yes to census. We want to take care of patients. This is how we pay our bills. We want to have our own staff. You know, that's important. We don't want to run a bunch of agency to take care of our residents. And we really spend time establishing that. We spend time with, you know, listening and hearing what the staff has to say and seeing who are the key leaders in those buildings, whether they're named or unnamed. Like, who are those folks that are influencers in these facilities? I mean, we spend a lot of time just knowing. You know, we sit in a room sometimes and we're like, okay, Appling, we got to get this person on board if we're going to accomplish anything. You know, this is the driver here at the facility, or they need a partner, and really strategizing each and every facility, knowing what we need to do in order to get where we need to go.
And Jody, you have a definite playbook. It's not like you're going in and saying, I wonder what we need to do here. You
Yeah.
guys have a checklist. And just tell us a little bit
Clinically,
about
we
that.
have 9 clinical systems we implement, usually day 1, if not day 2, when the internet's back up. We introduce 9 clinical systems that involves the DNS, all of nursing administration.
So Jody, let me just double click on that a little bit. Talk about what some of those clinical systems are that you're implementing.
So one of them being clinical meeting, and that is, we had an A&I, the follow-up, the notification, the care plan, the Cardex, doing rounds to make sure those interventions are in place. So that is labs. Are they normal, abnormal? Did we get a new medication? Is the medication here? Do we notify the family of the lab? So just all the clinical follow-up 24/7. Now, Journey has afforded us a lot of clinical applications that help our nursing team go faster, smarter, definitely more efficient. So we're not doing it very barbarically like we did in 1995. It goes very fast, very smooth, but it is a different process. It is something that they have to learn, they have to follow up, and then our regional nurses, they only have 3 or 4 buildings that they're overseeing. So they are actually in the buildings making sure that these 9 clinical systems are intact. And looking for room of opportunity. How can we get the system in place very quickly to make sure that we're providing quality of care?
Austin, what's your perception of the first few months of what you all are doing that's working?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have hit on it, but, something that we're very intentional about as well is, we have some systems that we put into place, right? And we know and we believe that, hey, these systems they work, right? It's really the human error that, causes the system not to work, So we try to implement these, but we're very intentional about the education that we're providing, to our team, our care team as well. We pull them out of the building. We pull them out and we give them education. We train them. We teach them. Then we have, as Jody's talking about, we have people on our team that are then going to them and they're able to reinforce it and help make sure that we're putting those systems into place in all of our new buildings as well.
I mean, I think it's great that you have a playbook and it's like, we're going to take over this building, we're going to go in here, here's the systems they're going to implement, this is what we're going to do on day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yeah.
You're
And
not just kind of going in and feeling your way around.
We meet with the team ahead of time as well. That's part of our, our playbook as well. We try to meet with the team to let them know, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And then we implement it, So we kind of give them just a little bit of a look, behind the curtain.
I just want to add to that. Bernie is also a nurse. So all of these clinical systems, there's push reports that are sent every day to me that I follow up on certain buildings or regions, maybe a new facility, or it may be a troubled facility, that I'm following up to make sure that these clinical systems are intact. Bernie, certain buildings, he might want to follow up on. So even our CEO is privileged to some of the clinical follow-up that comes 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, you've had some of the metrics that I talked about at the top of the panel are really impressive, and I want to focus on those and see if you have any advice, tips, for, thoughts on how you have achieved this. So let's start out with agency use. I know a lot of the buildings that you take over are like, 50% agency, and you guys, you don't just drive it down, you drive it down to 0. How do you do that?
Yeah, in our first 22 buildings, just giving a measure, I think 17 out of the 22 were using agency day 1, and within 90 days, we were completely out, and we stayed out in all those facilities. They've been out for over a year. And what I find is during the pandemic, a lot of norms became abnormal, that chaos. And the first thing that we do is reintroduce the basics. Things that you would think as an administrator or a former director of nursing that are happening in a building, like reviewing applications, calling them, doing interviews when they show up on time, touring those folks, having a 30-day schedule, real basic ABCs of long-term care. We focus first on ensuring all of that's in place and they can't get it wrong. It's repetitious, it's built into their behavior. That's one piece, and that goes a long way. And the second thing is, I think as a company, everybody's got to find who they are. You have to have something to sell to the employees out in the market. And, we call ours the Journey Advantage. In whether it's, hey, we do perfect attendance, we do weekly pay, all employees get a free cell phone if they're full-time, and, all the different items that make up your package of who you are as a company. You have to have something to sell,
So you call it the Journey Advantage, and the Journey Advantage has a lot of really cool benefits in it. Yeah. Joe, did you have?
Oh, it helps the director of nursing strengthen her bench. If they have a free cell phone, there's one rule: you have to answer the phone. So if we have shifts that we're asking people to pick up, they're going to answer the phone. We're paying the bill for the cell phone. They have telemedicine. We have great insurance, United Healthcare. It's very affordable, $30 per pay period. But if you're a CNA and you can't afford health benefits, everybody gets free telehealth. So that is for them and anybody who lives in their household. So the 4-year-old who has an ear infection, instead of taking them to the ER or instead of calling off work, they can do a telehealth. That's free for all of our care team members and those that live in their household. Those are true benefits that are very impactful to our care team members. But it also is a huge resource to the DNS or Director of Nursing to be able to bring in a good group of nurses, aides to not have to use agency. People want those benefits. Behavioral health, if you need counseling services or you're grieving, it's offered to every care team member at no cost. And it's another example of changing the world one heart at a time. I mean, the benefits that our employees get they're not getting those anywhere else.
Yeah, one of the things that jumps out at me, and if you can share this a little bit, is your perfect attendance bonus. I don't know how much you want to share about that.
I mean, I
it's
can
a
jump in
great idea.
and talk about it a little bit, but a lot of things we do. I mean, we're intentional about it. The perfect attendance bonus. They get a bonus. Our care team, our direct care, they get a bonus on their check every paycheck if they show up to the scheduled shifts that they were supposed to work. If you've ever operated, you know that the worst thing that happens is somebody calls off. Because morning meeting stops immediately because I've got a kids thing this afternoon. I can't stay and work. I'm not taking the keys to that cart. Jody, she's coming up with something, and it's always, Bernie always talks about, it's put together like a quilt, our schedule. And so we think the perfect attendance bonus, because we want to have aligned incentives for our whole organization for them to show up, because if they show up, then, the 9 clinical systems, our operational efficiencies can continue. But that's why we incentivize for the perfect attendance, not just to, show up. You have to show up for all your scheduled shifts, and then it resets.
And it's not a minor amount. I mean, and we won't get into the specifics, but it's a very generous bonus, and it causes people to show up. And it reduces your overtime. It allows you to have no agency, and it's a brilliant thing saying we're going to pay up front for our regular workers what we might normally pay in agency or what we might normally pay in overtime if they show up. And so I can see how they fight like crazy to make sure they show up for their shifts. It's really smart.
And the pay period ends Saturday at midnight. So if you have a weekend bender, you missed your incentive for 2 pay periods. Because the other thing that we do to meet our staff is we pay every single week as well. We have weekly pay. They can get paid every single day if they would like, but we also have weekly pay.
Okay. One of the finishing touches on our agency elimination plans, I think that eliminating agency is, in a way, I think you really are, you're breaking down the pillars of a poor culture and you're rebuilding anew. And you can't do something that hard without a full commitment at every level in the company, and especially at the top level. Jody gets challenged. She's challenged all the time where a building is trying to accomplish something hard, and they just want that little go-ahead from a chief nursing officer or from the CEO or from the regional nurse of like, it's okay to not follow the standard and to let a little agency in the door. And we are committed at our core to being out of agency, and having that support allows our buildings to say, hey, burn the boats. We got to make this happen. We've got to tackle this challenge. So.
Yeah, and you're not going to leave people because they know that if they work for you and they get their perfect attendance bonus, they're making a lot more than they would make at any other facility in the area.
And the consistency drives outcomes. We're taking care of the care team members, but the resident is getting the true benefit. It's the same nurse, the same CNA on the same day showing up to meet their needs.
Let me ask you if it works, because, we all had people, I'm thinking when Stacy and I operated, they were going to come in and they were going to do their perfect attendance anyway. And so what you do when you adopt this policy is you're just giving them extra money. So that's not really helping the bottom line. Does it change the behavior of those 40% or so that you can't count on every shift?
I have a funny story about that. In a past life, we implemented this program, same program. And the company I was with, we acquired a facility that my wife was actually a weekend nurse at. She was just working, I think, every other Saturday and Sunday. And so that was fun. But, and she said, man, that perfect attendance program that you guys implemented really works, the first week. And I said, well, why do you say that? Kind of this inside view. She said, the nurse that I follow every week is an hour late every single week. And she's like, I just manage my schedule to adjust to that. I know he's going to be late. She said Saturday and Sunday, he came right on time, both days. Wow. It's truly a behavioral change. So it was a large enough amount that he wasn't going to miss it.
Right. If they're late, I assume they don't get it? Is there any leeway?
We give them a little bit of leeway. You get one tardy a week and one missed punch. We want to give them the perfect attendance. Like we want, if 90% of our staff got it, that means care was better. People showed up on time. They didn't call in. Any call in during that 7 days, you lose it, and you get reset on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm sure your scheduling people love it because they're getting less calls.
It's enough for a decent sized car payment, really. It wouldn't pay for Jody's car, but it's a nice sized bonus
cool.
on a monthly basis.
I think what you said, Mark, is true in that, sure, there are some people that that you can always trust, and they're going to show up. Those people win immensely with our program because they were going to be there no matter what. And now they're just getting paid more to do what they were already doing. But to Matt's point about changing the behavior, we are changing the behavior on the other 40 to 50%, where now they're showing up consistently and changing that, opposed to having that call off.
And you're creating really good loyalty among the 50 or 60% that are going to show up anyway. So, it's super smart. Okay, the other thing that you've done that, I don't understand why more operators don't focus on this. It's a crazy thing to even say that, is census. A lot of people, they're like, oh, we're 80%, that's the national average, we're good, we're fine, we're just going to kind of stick with that. The math of census is just crazy. Each additional resident in a facility, even at a poor Medicaid rate, is, like $125,000 a year, and the marginal overhead cost for each additional resident is maybe $20,000 a year. You guys have obviously figured that math out. What is your occupancy, and how have you been able to achieve this super high level that you've got?
Yeah, a couple of things. We have to run the occupancy because Jody likes to buy all these programs and things. So if you're a vendor, talk to her. But, in all reality, we really hold people accountable. We tell people right up front, hey, we're never going to shy away from asking about census. We need it. We also think that we provide great care. And at the end of the day, if the referral is coming, if they don't go to us, they're going to go to somebody. So they might as well come to us. And we have a pretty robust strategy related to census. We have, we've created a central intake system. We have liaisons. We have marketers that are in the building, and they have marketing plans. And people are out, and they are actively trying to sell. What we're doing as well. But one thing that I think is a differentiator for us is our company does have a census culture. You know, I am the one who, at the end of the day, is kind of held to census, but Jody has a buy-in on census. You know, she has her nursing leaders, they have buy-in. Matt, as our COO, he has buy-in. And we all know, and we all push census to each one of our communities. We have some tools that we use. You know, we were probably early adopters in some of the AI technology. From the admission standpoint, you know, we work with a lot of managed care organizations. We try to, you know, we just told a managed care company the other day, like, no, we're not going to be contracted with you anymore because your rate is so bad, you know. And then we've been able to work really hard to get some good rates with some of the other providers. But it is something that we believe in, and we don't just say, oh, well, we're better than the state average. Well, last time, I didn't want to be average ever, you know? I mean, I think in school, it was a C if you were average, I think is what it was, you know? Somebody the other day just told me that their kid has like a 4.68 GPA, and I don't even understand that. I thought a 4.0 was perfect. But, you know, we really do, you know, focus on census. And I mean, Matt, if you want to add anything to that.
You know, I think that where a census culture comes in, I mean, it really moves the needle. We recently took over part of an acquisition we took over had a major census problem. I think they had, you know, were they 60? I don't want to name names, but maybe 65, 70% occupied in a state that we were running 95% occupancy in, and just a census culture in like, hey, we're gonna turn these, you know, we're gonna turn these rooms into, you know, back into resident rooms, and we're gonna plan to admit into them, and we're gonna follow the, you know, you're gonna get ready to follow this clinical grid, and those communities, their census moved 45 in the first 3 weeks of acquisition, and that just they had decent quality. Actually, this was actually an acquisition, six or seven buildings that had pretty solid quality core. And why wouldn't they want to take care of more patients?
So both of you mentioned it today, and I've heard it at other meetings that I've been at with Journey, where people talk about a census culture of census, and that's, I think, really critical. That you all actively talk about, hey, if our mission statement is really to change the world one heart at a time, we got 20 extra rooms here where there's 20 hearts we could put in here and live our mission.
Yeah.
But just not accepting that, oh, we're at 80 or we're at 82 and the state average is 78 or 80, so we're fine. You guys don't do that. It's like, if we're not at, like, what's your average, like 90 plus or something?
Yeah.
If we're not at 90 plus,
It is.
we're not living our mission.
Yeah.
But I just haven't heard other organizations so intentionally talk about it all throughout the organization. Your administrators get it, your DONs get it. It makes, you know, and it's obviously working.
It really makes you a yes company. You know, hey man, we really want to try this awesome new program or this new software, or, you know, traditionally we wouldn't pay for this for one of our residents, but, you know, it seems like this is the right thing to do. When you run census, it makes you a company that can say yes.
We also removed the clinical acceptance denial away from the director of nursing. We sat down, us three, and decided what we wanted in our facilities, and there's very little that we don't accept, very little. And we found a way to say yes. And so we've let the clinicians know, we're not gonna bog you down with more work. You don't need to read the referral. In fact, they're coming. The patients are coming. They've been blessed by us, and be ready to accept. And we have lots of buildings, Matt left this out, that have hit 98, 99, 100% occupancy. It's amazing.
Did you just on stage admit that clinical is the challenge in admitting people?
In a lot of organizations.
I will say that, you know, census, we have this census culture, but in order to achieve the census culture, it really is a mindset. You know, I think that I'm from Indiana, and IU won the national football, they won the national championship. And Kurt Signetti, who is, a couple of years ago, I promise you, nobody here would even know who the guy was, right? And he came to Indiana, and they announced him where? At a basketball game, right? And he got out there, and he said, all I do, I win. Google me, right? And everybody's heard this, which is true, because he creates a mindset with his people. And by the way, everybody cheered at IU, and Matt's an IU grad, and he would probably tell you this, but everybody left that basketball game going, he does know he's going to lose here, right? It's IU. It's the losingest football program ever. And they just went undefeated and literally were kicking the teeth in on schools like Georgia and Oregon that have been perennial powerhouses because they changed the mindset. We changed the mindset in some of these buildings that you thought that you couldn't admit people. Well, they just started admitting people miraculously when we changed their mindset. So when we talk about that census culture, it really is a mindset. You just have to make sure that, hey, you're the coach or you're the captain. You got to make sure that everybody on your ship has that mindset.
Okay, we're running out of time, and there's at least two more questions I want to ask. So, Jody, I'm going to ask this one of you, which is the QMs. You've taken the QMs up one full star. What would be the highlights for how you've done that?
QMs are very important. It's basically saying the care that we're providing. So it's unacceptable for any of our buildings to be a 1-star. That's not the care. So it's a race to be 3 and above quickly. Week 1, we write a PIP review of anything that's below national average. I think 90% or more came over as a 1-star QM. Most of those are 3-star or above. Some are 5-star already. But we do a weekly PIP review. We do use an application to assist with that, anything that's below. I think the most important thing is making sure that we're doing it in real live time. So if we're using an application that's showing a quarter ago or 6 months ago, it's really, we're gonna constantly be a 1 or a 2-star. It's important to educate your DNS, your MDS, your regional nurses on what are the quality measures that impact 5-star rating, what are the thresholds, the national averages, and then consistently every week putting action items in to improve. Oh, we grew a wound, that wound's resolved, let's do an MDS and get that off of our QMs. Setting alerts for falls when we can remove those. Today, if we've taken somebody with a catheter, it's very important that your leadership team in the building knows there's only 2 appropriate diagnoses for this catheter. If not, I should question this and reach out to our medical director to either have an appropriate diagnosis or remove the catheter. If we wait 2 weeks, it's definitely gonna hit your QMs. So just educating all of nursing administration on what are the quality measures, and they change, they're different. And making sure that they understand upon admission, if there's an antipsychotic, do we have an appropriate diagnosis? Do we need to start the GDRs? So.
Okay, I'm going to shift a little bit. I call it the West Coast offense. PACS, Ensign, Lynx, Cascadia, all those. They have massive incentives for their administrators and their DONs if they hit certain metrics. Do you all do that? And if so, what are the metrics that you reward? What are you telling your DONs and administrators they need to do in order to get those bonuses? So
I'll take that. One of the things that we try to do, we certainly don't push ourselves. So we're very competitive. I think we have an incentive program that we rarely miss our administrator recruit or director of nursing recruit. So we feel like we're very market competitive there. But I think the most important thing is to have a well-balanced incentive program that starts with quality, and you're including your expenses, your census, and all the different metrics that are important to you as a company. And We have a incentive plan that pays monthly, quarterly, annually. But the most important piece is our directors of nursing and our executive directors have the same incentive plan. And so we've structured ourselves to be united. Whenever I've run a building as an administrator, if I was on the same page with my director of nursing, whether we're trying to accomplish quality, a good survey outcome, census, no agency, expense control, EBITDA, like any of those things, we were united, nothing could stop us. And so when the administrator is bonusing off of EBITDA, so is the director of nursing. When the director of nursing is bonusing off of quality measure improvement, so is the administrator. And they are united in their goals, and that has done wonders for us to be able to drive that
I
forward.
mean, that's a great tip, because if you have an administrator who's bonused on occupancy and a DON that's bonused on QMs, the DON's going to say, maybe we can't take care of that patient. We're not sure we can really do it. But you've got the exact same criteria. It's really, really interesting and smart. Jody, did you have anything you wanted to add?
We've talked a lot about special focus, but I mean, two of our buildings in Kentucky, which is a tough state, they had perfect surveys. So I think the United Front, it's a force. And we're looking forward to more in 26. The systems, the processes, the applications, they work, but the unity of the executive director and DNS is super important.
You guys do a lot of things for employee engagement, and we've talked about that already. One of the things that's really special that you did, I guess your first year, was your skills competition. And that's very copyable, so I wonder if one of you could just describe what the skills competition was and the impact that it had.
I don't think any of us knew the impact it was going to have. We took 22 troubled buildings.
At the time, this is at the time you had 22 buildings.
Yes. Everyone, we couldn't validate their skill set or know that their competencies or skills were being followed by our standards. So on our e-learning platform, we chose 17 different clinical competencies based on their disciplines. We gave them 30 days to get all 17 competencies done. On day 30, we had 100% compliance, over 1,000, I think it was 1,064 care team members. So that's LPNs, RNs, CMTs, CNAs, completed all of their competencies. But during that time, our CEO, Bernie, this was his idea to have a lot of fun with it and make it like America's Got Talent. So our judges and our panelists were experts in our field. Mark was one of our panelists who was paired up with regional nurses. And each building got to choose a CNA and a nurse. The nurses were flown into Indianapolis. The CNAs were flown into Georgia. A lot of the care team members had never even flown before. So there were people at the airport from our corporate office to greet them when they got off their plane.
Austin was the driver, as I recall.
Yes, he was our chauffeur.
I was a driver, and then in Atlanta, I was inside the ropes, just going to terminal, grabbing people.
We took him to dinner, got him comfortable. The next day, we basically turned a conference room into what a patient cares room would look like. They didn't know which 5 clinical competencies that they would have to compete for in front of their peers. We chose 5 for the aides, 5 for the nurses. There were 3 first, second, and third place winners for the aides fair, and for the nurses, they all got travel vouchers. First place got $10,000 travel voucher for them and their family. Second place got $5,000. Third place got $2,500. First place also got a full ride nursing scholarship. And then that was going to be the same for the CNAs. And at the end, ownership changed and said all 22 CNAs were granted a full ride nursing scholarship. So it was amazing. It was probably the best 2 days in my career. There were tears.
That's
there
making
wasn't
your
a dry
mission
eye.
statement. Yeah, I mean, that's making your mission statement real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know that there was like a dry eye, in the room. I mean, really, that is changing the world. And it's not just changing the world, it's changing some of our care teams' entire family. You know, it's going to change what their kids get to do, what they get to experience, where they get to see, get to see the world. It's really neat. I mean, we have a short video if you want to get on our website. I'm not trying to bait you into going to our website, but journey-hc.com. We've got a really cool video where you can see it and kind of experience it. And literally, if you have a heart, you'll probably tear up watching it. I mean, it's that cool.
And one thing I want to add, most importantly, our CNAs and nurses are every day practicing to be more competent. And our residents are benefiting from it. Our survey outcomes have improved. But at the end of the day, we're delivering much better care than the residents were receiving months ago. So
Yeah, it was really fun. And when Bernie announced that every single one of them was going to get a scholarship, it was a remarkable moment. You had these young women and men calling their families, FaceTiming with their parents. It was incredible. So where do you all see Journey? I mean, this has all happened in less than 24 months. What do you see for the next 5 years? Matt, I'll start with you. Where do you see this headed?
In the immediate 18 months, we'll probably see some significant growth in the third quarter this year. And like 2025, we'll spend some time digesting, and really making sure we raise the level to the Journey standards and in these facilities. And then, further, I kind of passed the ball to Austin on this, but really further integrating within the continuum of care. So
I think 5 years from now, after everything's stabilized, we can focus on specialized units and just, being a good provider for our communities.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you say that, and then I think of, where will we go in 5 years? I mean, I think that we will look at how we can integrate, maybe some of those ancillary services that we can help, provide to some of our residents, but also to be able to actually just continue, as Matt said, to fine tune our skills, because we do ask a lot of our people. We actually grew to 22 buildings in about a half a year. And then we did not actually acquire an entire building in 25. And then now in 26, we're back in that growth mode. So, we'll grow in 26, and then 27 will probably be a little bit of a lull for us, where we can refine those skills, because it does take a lot to, bring buildings on. But then we'll continue to look at how we can, further care for folks within our space.
Great. We actually have a time for one or two questions. If anybody has something they really want to add. Yeah.
Could you give a little bit of insight? Do you have a philosophy or even an economic consideration as it relates to the perfect attendance bonus? How do you factor that into the annualized compensation in your OpEx? I'm going to smush one more question then too. And do you ever see it shifting maybe the cultural mindset where it has adverse effects, like it feels punitive when they miss it? Can you speak a little bit about some of the economic on that?
Sure. I do think if you were to, I don't want to give too far details, but if you were to take all the programs that you run, and excessive costs, whether it's agency, overtime, pickup bonuses, right? Everybody plays the pickup bonus game, right? They wait till Friday and it keeps doubling and doubling until you finally get the shifts picked up. You take all of those and redirect them up front. We all have these resources that we're using. We're just putting them in the places that drive poor behavior. And so if you take those economics and you put them in a place that drives positive behavior, then, it typically goes really well. And, one of the things that you talk about punitive, that is a very acute issue that happens when you implement a large program like this. And so if you hold the line, first thing that typically happens is we take over and we tell the administrators, we're going to follow it to a T. No matter what, we're going to follow these rules. Even if our best CNA says, hey, I had a flat tire, And we truly, when the staff knows, because they talk, when they know that we're going to stick to it, they make the appropriate adjustments. And when someone misses it, and let's say it's $200 off that week's check, because they didn't get it, they make the adjustments, and when someone sees it on the opposite end, and they're like, oh man, my check is significantly larger. I'm a day shift CNA. I'm doing the same thing I was before with the previous company. It makes positive and negative behavior change. On the negative side, we see less attendance write-ups. Why? If you lost $200, that's write-up enough, right? We don't have to get into that punitive mode, and people make the adjustments because of the positive and negative benefit of it.
Yeah, very
Matt
interesting.
also monitors compliance. So if a building was giving out 100% bonuses, he knows that's not possible. I think it's around 85% that we pay out on perfect attendance
84% company-wide.
That's really high. Okay, we have one more question, then we're going to have to stop. Yep.
Sure. When you acquire a new building, what are the first steps to gaining that public trust back? We're talking about a lot of the things you're doing internally, and eventually, that will feed into that public trust. But you just acquire a facility, what are the first steps? It has a 1.5 on Google, what do you do?
That's never an overnight. We do the things, we send out a family letter, and not every facilities that we acquire is in that positioning. They all have different challenges of reason why they were sold. But I think one of the things that makes the biggest difference is we're an in-person company. We do very little remote. I could do half of my job from an office at the house. We come to the office. Bernie comes to the office every day. Jody drives all the way from St. Louis to the office, all the way to Indianapolis, in person. We are an in-person company, which means our regionals, they go into the buildings every day. They spend about half a home office day a week. And so that creates connectivity to the residents and the community above just the facility level. And over time, that changes because you hear the little things. You see, you're not just saying, oh, corporate's coming and it's once a month. I think being in person really matters. Body language matters, how we engage each other, and that helps change trust in a community.
Okay, we're going to have to cut it off. I don't know if you guys are going to stick around for lunch or not, but if you have questions, you follow up with them. But yeah, I think after you hear this, it's not at all surprising. Even though it's an incredible accomplishment, what you've done for the last 2 years, it's not surprising. And thank you so much for sharing all with us today.